afternoon. We are coming to you live from our KTN studios here in Nairobi, bringing you news as it happens on KTN NewsDesk. I'm Betty Callow.
That's right, and my name is Bonnie Tunya. On this 12th day of March 2013, we bring you news as it happens. Of course, we're following up on a lot of stories currently happening. The big one, the court petition that is pending in court, but also we are just about to get a new pope. We have those details.
On our developing story this afternoon, of course, like Tunya mentioned, we are following up on the court petition. Of course, they have gone to the High Court to take IEBC and Safaricom for allegedly not giving them enough documentation that they need to go ahead with their petition. That, of course, is our developing story this afternoon. Now, the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy has this morning moved to the Milimani High Court to compel the IEBC and Safaricom to give it information for its presidential election petition after formal requests to the IEBC failed to yield any results.
Now, the petition compels the IEBC and Safaricom Limited to furnish the coalition with relevant documentation related to the recent presidential elections.
Well, the court coalition says that the information will be integral in the court petition challenging the purported declaration by IEBC of Uhuru Kenyatta as the president-elect to be filed later this week. Well, Asha Muilu now joins us live from the High Court with the latest. Over to you, Asha.
Thank you very much, Betty. Good afternoon to you and Tunya. We are live from the Milimani High Court. Of course, we've been following closely that case, court petition concerning the presidential election. So what I can tell you right now is that this morning the court coalition came to the High Court and it's seeking to petition the IEBC and Safaricom to be compelled to provide very relevant, what they say, crucial information concerning their presidential petition. And of course, court says that in their petition they say that the IEBC and Safaricom have ignored their calls to provide this information. So what happened after the court coalition dropped their petition with the registry? It was heard by Justice Isaac Lenaola, of course, in the courtroom here at the Milimani High Court, and through their lawyer Jonathan Arwa and their petitioner Eliud Owalo, who has been the chief campaigner for the court coalition. The court coalition says that they want the IEBC to include all forms, that is 34, 35 and 36 from all polling stations. They claim that their evidence to show the allegations of irregularities in how IEBC tallied this presidential election concerned these three forms, 34, 35 and 36, and this is why they say that they want the IEBC to provide all these forms from all the polling stations. Well, they're also seeking log files for all short messages that were declared electronically from Safaricom when the electronic tallying process was still taking place. What they also want is that they want the Green Book, provisional register for all registered voters across the country, and the final register that the IEBC had. Furthermore, Betty, they want contracts that were signed between the IEBC and Safaricom in relation to the March 4th election. And so, Betty, as you understand, according to the Constitution, all presidential disputes arising from the presidential elections are supposed to be filed at the Supreme Court within 7 days after the IEBC declares the winner of the presidential election. And this means that the court coalition has until Saturday of this week to file their petition at the Supreme Court. So this case here that they've filed, the petition that they have filed here at the Milimani High Court, can affect this time period, the grace period that they have. Of course, the Supreme Court will further have 14 days to hear and determine that case concerning the presidential dispute. What Justice Isaac Lenaola decided is that he declared this case, the petition concerning IEBC, Safaricom and the court coalition, urgent. And so they have set aside, the High Court has set aside tomorrow morning 8:45 a.m. to hear and determine this case. Of course, it's very urgent, very concerns public interest, and the High Court wants to speed it up. What we know is that the court has been instructed to give summons to the IEBC and Safaricom to appear before the court tomorrow morning. Betty.
Right, and Asha, probably a quick question is that we seem to be, the court coalition seem to be spilling off, but in terms of specifics, what court is handling what case? For example, the issue with Safaricom, is it supposed to be handled by the Lenaola court, or is it supposed to go to the Supreme Court?
Well, Bonnie, that is one thing that very many Kenyans are confused about. As we know, constitutionally, only the Supreme Court can hear disputes arising from the presidential election, and that's why I was telling you, court has 7 days after the IEBC declares the winner to file their petition and any dispute that they have concerning the presidential election only. And so that means any petitions that arise not concerning the presidential election should be brought here to the High Court, but because they want the IEBC and Safaricom to be compelled to release this information that they say could be evidence in their petition there at the Supreme Court, this court will be heard and determined here at the High Court, Milimani High Court in Nairobi.
Asha, just before we let you go, has there been any representation from IEBC or Safaricom at the High Court?
No. Today, only the court coalition came to drop the registry. You know, the court process is very systematic. What happens is that a petitioner brings the petition here and files it, drops it at the registry. This is what happened today. And so the court coalition, their petitioner is Eliud Owalo, as I had told you, with their lawyer Jonathan Arwa, came to the registry here and dropped that petition. What follows next is that the court determines when it will hear and determine this petition. And so Justice Isaac Lenaola did that today and declared this petition urgent, of course, for obvious reasons. So what happens next is that the IEBC and Safaricom have been instructed by the courts to show up tomorrow 8:45 a.m. when the hearing will be heard and determined.
Many thanks, Asha. Before I let you go, I know Betty said final question, but final. That was the provisional. But Asha Mulu, in terms of specifics, what kind of information is court requiring from both the IEBC and Safaricom?
Well, the very specific information that they want from the IEBC, their main concern is to do with the electronic tallying that the IEBC did and then switched to the manual tallying. And so they want the Form 34, 35, and 36. As you remember, once the IEBC abandoned the electronic tallying that they said had some issues, they went to the manual tallying. And so all their returning officers went to the Bomas of Kenya with the Form 34, 35, and 36. And so this is what the court coalition wants the IEBC to provide these forms, to just compare their numbers with what the returning officers presented at the Bomas of Kenya. Concerning Safaricom, they want all the log files, the short messages that were sent electronically. Remember, when the tallying process had begun, it was electronic, and what was happening is that at the polling station, the returning officer was sending a short message, and their service provider was Safaricom, and they were sending these short SMSs to the Bomas of Kenya, where the National Tallying Center was set up. And so the court coalition wants these logs of the short messages that Safaricom, of course, was relaying from the returning officers to the IEBC Tallying Center at the Bomas of Kenya. And furthermore, Betty and Tunya, we had spoken to Eliud Owalo, who is the petitioner of this specific case earlier on, and I just want to run a short clip so that you can see exactly what he said.
We want the court to order the IEBC and Safaricom to give us the documents and data that we require, because this information and data is an integral ingredient to the case, the petition that we will file at the Supreme Court later in the week, challenging the declaration of Uhuru Kenyatta by the IEBC as the president-elect of Kenya, arising from the elections. We have got massive evidence and data already pointing to the level of irregularity and fraud that was witnessed during the presidential elections. But over and above what we already have, we also want IEBC and Safaricom to be compelled by the court to give us certain other information that is pertinent to this case. We have sought this in writing from Safaricom and IEBC. So far, they have not been able to give us this information. So that is why we are here this morning, and the court has ruled that we come tomorrow in the morning at 8:45.
Betty Tunya, you've heard it from the man himself, Iludowalo. He's the guy who came here to file that petition on behalf of the Court Coalition. Of course, Betty will be bringing you the details of this case in our subsequent bulletins. Our viewers should be looking out for that.
Right, many thanks, Asha Mwilu. Keeping tabs for us at the High Court, where, of course, the court petition case is taking a life of its own. Now we know the court team has gone to court seeking specific information. That is Form 34A from Safaricom, and we are expecting to see how exactly that will turn out. Asha Mwilu, of course, is standing by to bring us the very latest as and when we have that.
Let's just continue that conversation with the Court Coalition having moved to the High Court to compel the Electoral Commission and Safaricom to give it information in regard to its presidential election petition. Safaricom still holds the position it gave last week Wednesday, saying that in no way were they involved in the technical design, management or specification of the service, the mobile software application, nor the graphic presentation of the results data used by the IEBC. We'll take a look at the mobile service provider's role in the IEBC electoral process. Well, there we go. That is the statement. It reads, in accordance with the terms of our contract with the IEBC, Safaricom's responsibility were twofold. The first was to provide the virtual private network for the conveyance of the results from polling stations across the country previously identified as having sufficient mobile coverage to the IEBC's constituency, county and national tallying center infrastructure. Well, the second was to deliver 17,900 original manufacture warranted handsets to the IEBC for use for polling staff for purposes of transmitting electronic results. Well, finally, Safaricom was neither involved in the supply of the software to be used on the mobile handsets nor the distribution and storage of the devices. That is what Safaricom said last Wednesday, when of course they were just clearing the air, saying that for them what they were really giving the service to in IEBC was nothing to do with the technical design, management or specification of the service, nor the mobile software application, nor the graphic presentation of the results. We know right now that the High Court, the Court Coalition has moved to the High Court to just to make sure that Safaricom and IEBC give them the documents that they require in regard to their petition. That is it from this side. We move on to Tunya.
Great. Of course, the complexities of that particular matter in court will be bringing you the very latest as and when it happens, after the determination by Justice Leah Naola, and eventually what will take place. Stay with KTN and we'll be more than glad to relay that information as and when it happens. What else is happening in the world? We are choosing a new pope, and today the selection of the retired Pope Benedict XVI successor begins. 115 cardinals will decide who will be the new spiritual leader of the world's 1.2 billion Roman Catholics. About 90 members of the conclave staff took an oath of secrecy yesterday ahead of today's conclave, while the cardinals go behind closed doors to take part in the secret election. The only sign to the public about the decision will be a smoke from a copper chimney in the longest conclave held since the turn of the 20th century lasted 5 days. If a pope is not elected in the first 4 days of voting, the cardinals will pause on the 5th day to pray, talk and listen to a brief speech given by the senior cardinals in order of the deacons.
Everybody out, and the doors of the Sistine Chapel will be locked and the voting will begin. Michael Walsh, thanks so much, a papal historian and author of The Conclave, a sometimes secret and occasionally bloody history of papal elections. Thank you.
Great, that's just a feel of what will be happening in the next few days as the 115 cardinals from across the world sit together and look at what will happen in regards to the new pope. But there are 10 things that probably Kenyans do not know about picking a new pope. And the first one is a lock-in, which basically means that the conclave comes from the Latin cum clave, meaning literally with key. Now the cardinals-elect will be locked in Sistine Chapel each day until Benedict XVI's successor is chosen. The tradition dates back to 1268. Next, after that, what will happen will be spying is tricky. During the conclave, they are allowed no contact with the outside world, no papers, no TV, no phones, no Twitter. And the world is not allowed to contact with them. Now the threat of the excommunication hangs over cardinals who break the rules before the conclave starts. Now the Sistine Chapel is swept for recording equipment or hidden cameras until 2005. Now the cardinals endured Spartan conditions in makeshift cells close to the Sistine Chapel. They slept on hard beds and were issued with chamber ports. Pope John Paul II changed that with the construction of a 5-story 130-room guest house near St. Peter's Dominus Sancret Martha. Now the pontificate used to be known as the reign, hence the period between the two popes being called an interregnum, or between reigns, if you like simple English. Now the cardinals hold one vote on day one and then two each in the morning and afternoon until a cardinal wins a 2/3 majority. Now each writes his choice on a slip of paper on disguised handwriting and folds it into half. Cardinals then process to the altar one by one and place the ballots in an urn. The papers are mixed, counted and opened and scrutinized by 3 cardinals. Now the third whom passes a needle and a thread through the counted votes. At the end of each morning and afternoon session, the papers are burned. Those 115 ballot papers produce an unusual amount of smoke which pours out of a chimney specifically installed on the roof of the Sistine Chapel. Now a chemical is mixed with the paper to produce a black smoke when voting is inconclusive, or white smoke when the Pope has been elected. But even the white smoke looks dark against a bright sky. So to avoid any possible confusion, white smoke is accompanied by the pealing of the bells, and the Pope has to look at the part when he is presented to the faithful from a balcony overlooking St. Peter's Square. So papal tailors, Gamaliel, prepare 3 sets of vestments that are small, medium and large sizes. Now the Pope dresses by himself, donning a gold-corded pectoral cross and a red embroidered stole. Experts suggest that more than 10 million pounds will be waged on people in regards to providing these particular things to the Pope, and the nod making this the world's most bet upon non-sporting event. Now it is not a new phenomenon. In 1503, betting on the Pope was already referred to as an old practice. Pope Gregory XVII was so chased off that in 1591 he threatened punters with excommunication. But the gambling continues unabated. Prominent Italian and Latin American names currently lead the field. Technically, an elected pope can refuse to take up the position, but it is not really done in turn down the Holy Spirit. That said, few relish prospects of the leading world's largest church, beset as it is at the moment with falling congregation numbers, sex abuse scandals and internal wrangles. Those just about the troubles that are facing the Catholic Church right now will be overcome by a new pope that is expected to be elected later on in the course of this week. Now it is commonly known as the Room of Tears. Chairs with a large hole cut in the seat are sometimes thought to have been used to check off the sex of the people of the new pope. The story that goes, the aim of checks was to prevent a repeat of a scandal of Pope Joan, a legendary female cardinal supposedly elected pope in the 14th century. Most historians agree that the Joan story is nonsense. Well, pretty much that's quite the process that goes through in trying to get a new pope. It's intricate and all that. We've been trying to get a priest to talk to us through this, but we'll be getting that very priest to speak to you in regards to the process of picking a new pope in our subsequent bulletins. But now you know. If you thought picking a pope was a walk in the park, now you know. Over to you, Betty.
Thank you very much, Tunya. By the end of the bulletin, I think you should be able to tell us if dissatisfied cardinals can indeed petition. But moving on, a Form 4 student died and several other people were injured in a road accident in Baragoi in Samburu County after the vehicle they were traveling in lost control and rolled into a valley. 9 of the injured are in critical condition at the Mararal District Hospital. According to eyewitnesses, the accident is being blamed on poor road networks. KTN's Angel Katusia has these details.
The wreckage of the Land Rover that was ferrying 11 people from Baragoi to Maralal, the remaining evidence of that grisly accident. The Land Rover is said to have lost control and rolled several times into the deep valley of Baragoi, leaving one person, a Form 4 student from Kisima High School, dead on the spot. Efforts to rescue 9 others who were seriously injured took hours due to the terrain. However, the Red Cross team managed to ferry the injured to Maralal District Hospital.
6 of them were students, 3 girls and 3 boys. The other 3 were 1 driver and other 2 men.
We actually regret for this accident, and we urge most our drivers to be very much careful when they are riding on these roads.
At the district hospital, the few health workers on duty were overwhelmed by the victims. Residents blamed poor road network for the accident, claiming the road has for years been neglected despite a number of accidents in the past. Baragoi area is characterized by deep valleys that stretch over kilometers, posing risk on majority of roads in the area.
Now, from that accident, we'll move to yet another sad story. An 85-year-old grandfather has been jailed for life by a Nakuru court for defiling 2 girls aged 9 and 6. Joseph Kamau Githu was sentenced to life imprisonment by the senior resident magistrate judicator Nthuku in absentia for defiling the 2 girls in Subukia. Githu had failed to appear in court on several occasions since January this year and was not present during the ruling. He is alleged to have defiled the girls on March the 3rd, 2011 at Jumatatu Farm in Subukia. According to the statement from the young girls, they were playing outside the man's house when he called them to his house to fetch water. That is when he defiled them. The defilement rather occurred. Githu was found guilty on both accounts, and senior residence magistrate judicator Nthuku directed the police to effect warrant of arrest immediately. Great. From that very sad story in Subukia and Nakuru, let's move to Pokot, and the Ministry of Agriculture has today flagged off 6 out of 24 trucks of traditional high-value crops to 31 counties, all in the region as it embarks on countrywide food security exercise. The Minister for Agriculture, Dr. Sally Koske, says the move is to ensure availability of food for all Kenyans as the long rain begin. A total of 517 metric tons of assorted drought-tolerant crop seeds, more than 1.5 million cassava cuttings and 2.4 million sweet potato vines will be distributed to farmers in 99 districts. Some of the drought-tolerant, early maturing and high-yielding seeds to be distributed are millet, cowpeas, sorghum and green grams, amongst others.
What we have now are better yielding seeds for a lot of the foods that we call traditional foods. It is also our aim and encouragement to the farmers of Kenya to produce these foods in plenty, because that is the only way we can avoid constant famine.
Let's now take a look at what is happening in the world of business. We'll start with what is happening at the Nairobi Securities Exchange right here in Nairobi, with a look at the biggest gainers in the Nairobi Securities Exchange. And top on our biggest gainers list is Jubilee Holdings at 9.66% with a good price of about 222 shillings. Williamson Tea is also up 9.09%, going at 240 shillings flat, as CFC Insurance Holdings and Kenya Reinsurance moving up marginally as regarding the position they were last time at 9.04 and 8.99. Samir Africa Limited closes the winners for us, up 8.89%. You can get it at a price of 4 shillings and 90 cents. Let's now take a quick look at the biggest drops of the week. And Kabasidi Investments is down 4.76%, down with a price of 120 shillings flat. BOC Kenya Gases at 100 shillings. That is the price, down marginally at 0.99. Barclays Bank also moving down marginally 0.88. All the other stocks in the losing counters, not a lot of movement much to write about. But Kenya Power has a good price at 5.50 and hasn't moved much from the position it was currently. That is how your money is doing currently at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. And remember, this data that I'm currently giving you will be scrolling at the bottom of your screen at the throughout this live telecast, so you do want to know how your money is doing for you. Elsewhere, let's look at what is happening elsewhere in the African markets. Let's now go to factors to watch in the African markets and take a look at how your money is working for you. We'll start, of course, right here in Nairobi. And after a peaceful concluded general elections, the market rallied 3% to close at 447.96. The all-share index also edged up to breach the 115 mark. Now, local investors dominated the market, accounting for about 70% of the day's activities. Elsewhere, the Kenya Central Bank of Kenya, as Monetary Policy Committee, meets to make its largest decision on the direction of the bank key lending rate as its last meeting in January. Now, the bank cut the rate to 9.5% from 11% previously. Elsewhere, a fight between two oil firms in Uganda tax kicks off London's High Court on Tuesday, as stake is enough to buy almost half of one of the companies and finance months of exploration drilling for yet another company. Let's go to West Africa now, and Nigeria's Naira currency eased to its lowest in 2 weeks against the US dollar on the interbank market on Monday, as the dollar supply from oil companies and offshore investors slowed. Meanwhile, President Goodluck Jonathan sacked the head of the Civil Aviation Authority in that country on Monday, citing unsatisfactory response to the concerns of the stakeholders in the aviation sector in Nigeria. Still in West Africa, and the Bank of Ghana said on Monday that the yield on its 91-day bill fell to 22.76% at the March 8th auction from 22.85% as at last auction. Meanwhile, Ghana's cocoa purchases were running to about 16.5% below last year by the end of February due to unfavorable growing weather patterns in that country. And still in that part of the world, let's go to Ivory Coast, where arrivals in the ports in top grower Ivory Coast reached 954,000 tons by March 10th, since the start of the season in October. Exporters estimated on Monday, compared to about 1,015,000 tons in the same period of the previous season of planting. Now, global miner Rio Tinto has slowed progress of its multi-billion investment in Guinea's untapped Somadu iron ore deposit and slashed off government sources in the West African country. This has been confirmed to a Reuters report. Elsewhere, Wall Street's record close overnight bolstered most Asian shares on Tuesday, as growing confidence in the U.S. economy underpinned investor risk appetite, while the yen slipped to fresh lows on speculation in the monetary rising. Finally, Brent futures have steadied to $110 a barrel on Tuesday, drawing support from strong equity markets that have helped counter concerns of a building in crude and stockpiles for an 8th straight week in the world's largest oil consumer, that is the United States of America. Before we forget, let's go down south to South Africa, where South Africa's broad oil share index booked a record close on Monday, as a weaker rand currency helped to boost some of the exporters, such as gold producer Harmony Bank and Gold Harmony in that part of the world. Those are the factors to watch in the African markets. Now you know where your money is and where it needs to go. Let's come back home to what is happening locally, and the Central Bank's Monetary Policy Committee is scheduled to meet today, with analysts expecting the bank to hold steady its benchmark lending rate after 4 consecutive rate cuts, with the most recent being in January, with the CBR slashed to 9.5%. Now, analysts believe the MPC will hold the rate to give it a bit of lag time in the market. This is intended to let the current rate to feed into the market while keeping an eye on credit growth, which is believed to be within the CBK's target. Now, with the recent political noise, analysts say this has made it difficult to pick up signals that will give the regulator and cue to adjust the CBA rate. Now, most prudent choices to hold it steady. At the same time, inflation has been steady on a rise over the last 2 months, with the CPI numbers in February standing at just about 4.5%. Well, my name is Boni Tunya. That has been NewsDesk on this 12th day of March 2013. Of course, our developing stories, the court petition, and we're keeping round the clock to bring you the details as and when we have them. Good afternoon.
Well, thank you very much for watching this edition of NewsDesk. I'm Betty Carlo. Have yourself a lovely afternoon.